Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent, and in this episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show, we talk about the origins of WebDM as we have special guest Jonathan Pruitt on. He talks about Starward Bound and his love of Spelljammer, as well as tips for streaming campaigns on the internet, and there are cats. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over there at Sir Lucian Gaming. And today we have a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend from WebDM, Jonathan Pruitt. Thank you so much for coming on to our humble show, sir.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Any chance to talk with fellow nerds, especially about subjects most nerdy, and I'm there.
No, that's fantastic. So our show is kind of, the format will change today, but generally we just talk about D&D news and then some of our own game campaigns that we're running. But you just got done with a charity game. Do you want to tell us who you were raising money for and what was going on with that?
This is Grant Ellis's thing he does around his birthday every year. This year we are supporting two charities, Trans Lifeline and the I always mess this up. The American
Suicide Prevention?
Yeah, thing for suicide prevention. Sorry, it's the middle word that throws me off.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
How good of a host I am.
That's great, and you guys have raised quite a bit of money so far. And
we were close to $1,430, almost
awesome.
to the $1,500 goal already. I have my One Punch Man one shot tonight. I believe they're about to start another game here in a couple of hours from the Monty Cook people doing an Invisible Sun campaign or one shot. And so, yeah, I think we're going to hit that goal pretty well.
What's can you give us a teaser about your One Punch game that's coming up?
Yeah. I mean, it's I've wanted to run a One Punch Man like show or like an actual campaign because I think Cypher System is so perfect for One Punch Man that it hurts. And just seeing the characters that have been made, I've been proven right. I kind of ran a test of this adventure at PAX Unplugged with 8 people at the table and even one spectator. And the thing that I was glad a spectator was there because at the end I asked her, I'm like, did you have a good time? She was like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. And I'm like, okay, cool. If somebody can just sit there for 3 hours and watch a game, then it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's going to incorporate some elements of the show. If anybody who's familiar with One Punch Man, if they remember the Paradisers and the suits that they stole, the company they stole them from is integral to this. It's going to be at Megacorp. I'll let that out in the heart of City M. And, it's just a grand opening in the food court. That's all. Just nothing big. What could happen? What could go wrong?
Absolutely.
What could go wrong? Cypher System's a great game, too. It's funny, too, because it was at GameholeCon that we got to meet up, and you guys were doing a lot of interview stuff, and you're walking around and hanging out and playing games and talking to developers and stuff. And then you kind of turn around a couple weeks later, you go to PAX Unplugged, and there you guys like cocooned yourself in that free RPG area and just were running game after game after game for all the Patreons and the fans. And it was super cool to see you guys just running lots of games. But what was that like running like a full gauntlet of games from like morning till evening? Do you go to dinner?
Well, I mean, I only ran 2 games. I ran one game on Saturday, one game on Sunday. Jim, I think, ran 3 or 4. I know he ran a one shot in his Land Between Two Rivers setting, and I think he ran a couple in Ravnica just for fans and patrons. And it was, I mean, that was my first experience running a game at a con. And I mean, that Cypher game with 8, like I've never run a game for 8 people and I've never run a game at a con. And that was my first experience. And it was, I will say this, it was freeing. It was a true experience of just letting whatever shows up at the table, just let it ride. And I recommend to anyone that can go to a con and run a game and just realize like what it's like to just let go and have fun. Because I had realized, in that moment, I realized like how I was still kind of protective of my precious campaign, of Starward Bound. And in like this last couple weeks since PAX, I've just let shit fly at the table left and right. So, oh, by the way, sorry for cursing. I don't know how blue y'all work here.
No, we're all good.
Okay, cool. Well then, fuck it. So yeah, I will say that it was a truly freeing experience. And then the Starward Bound one shot that I ran was absolutely great. It was a fun little wrap back to the previous week's adventure in the regular game, where they went to a asteroid field, and in the one shot you got to see how that asteroid field was created.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a heist that ended in a big Michael Bay explosion of an asteroid, and it was fun to like just do a nice little button hook on the previous week's adventure in the regular game, and you just kind of see a little prequel adventure. And I don't know, that's what's fun about convention one shots is you can have fun little things in your ongoing campaign world that affect the world, but it's just fun. It's just
Yeah. Was this with strangers or with people that you had, or like your Starward Bound group?
No, well, actually, I did not play with anyone from the actual Starward Bound group, even though Kiana was there, and Emma was there. So that would have been fun, but no, it was, but it was people that I knew.
Okay.
Charlie, who plays on Scraticus' channel and everything, and I play Warhammer with her on Wednesdays on Encounter Roleplay. She played. Anna, who plays with Travis on a Scrat game, she was there. One of our patrons was there. Donathan Fry, who I play Call of Cthulhu with. It was amazing to actually kind of DM for him. His character was amazing, Sir Toombs, the Yanti that totally wasn't a Yanti. He's just a regular man. So it was fun to actually, that's another thing about these games is you actually get to see people from the chest down and get to see their legs.
Yes,
and,
real, yeah.
And shake their hand and have a beer with them. And so yeah, it was an absolute blast. I mean, God, I cannot wait for the next convention. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. When is your next convention? Do you think you're gonna go to?
We are going to WebDM will be at PAX South,
Nice.
though we are not going to be there in a official capacity. We're not
Right.
going to have the camera gear and all that shit. We just want to go have a good time, play some games in the free gaming area, probably spend too much money on dice and other shit.
Yeah.
It's what you do. But I want to go and just like walk the floor a little bit more than we did last year. And because we had the crew, the camera, and Travis following us around, and we were all mic'd up, and I want to just go have more fun and play games. Especially because it is a big video game convention. So seeing all the new hotness that I'll never actually play in real life, but it's fun to see it, first.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I always got to throw, like, at the Gamehole Con, you were doing really good interviews with a lot of the D&D celebrities, and you guys were always throwing them curveballs. So I thought, Pruitt needs a curveball. What's your favorite drink as a player, but then what's your favorite drink when you're the DM?
Oh, I mean, any kind of drink or just drink?
Besides any? Yeah.
Well, honestly, if I'm going to, other than just water, because come on, kids, you got to stay hydrated. When you're sitting there, you're gaming a lot. Make sure you get the water and get the H2O in there. You don't want to cramp up.
We need that on a shirt, your face with don't cramp up, stay hydrated, gamers.
I want you to stay hydrated. Just Uncle Pruitt and a big white beard, Uncle Sam. Anyway, but honestly, if I'm drinking at the table, I'm drinking beer, and I don't do anything because it's a long game and you don't want to get too sauced. But honestly, I loves me some Stella Artois and Shinerbach, things like that. Although I will say, Newcastle is a great beer to drink while gaming. It is smooth, it is refreshing, and I usually drink it a little slower so I don't get as funned up, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So you've played a lot of not only Dungeons and Dragons, but like role-playing games in general.
Yep.
Is Dungeons and Dragons your favorite, would you say? Or do you have, after experiencing Warhammer and Cthulhu and all these others that you're like the myriad of shows that you guys have got going on, has there been something that's replaced Dungeons and Dragons, or do you have a second favorite? Or I don't know, I'm just curious about your role-playing games?
Yeah, in all honesty, I would have to say my favorite system to play in is what I'll be playing tonight, Cypher. It
Really?
is just infinitely malleable. You can play any setting, any type of game in it. The rules are already in place for that. I mean, just the fact they did that Kickstarter for the second run of like Numenera books, Destiny and Discovery. Yeah. And they didn't change the rules. Like, that's how good the rule system is. It's like, well, if it ain't broke, just give me more options.
Yeah.
You get 2 big ass books, and I have them sitting right over here, and they're beautiful. But it's just it's one of those systems that is so simple. Well, at least for me, it seemed complicated right up until the point that somebody explained it to me, and I was like, oh, that's really easy. And just how fast it moves in combat, the fact that the players are engaged both in offense and defense because the GM doesn't roll really anything. You know, you're rolling to attack and you're rolling for defense. And also the biggest thing, and this happened at PAX Unplugged, where else in whatever game where it's a D20 system do people cheer when you roll a fucking 6? That doesn't happen. And that's the thing with Cypher is you do all the, like in D&D, you roll your die and you're like, okay, now I got to add this and whatever. And then what's its AC? And then that instant gratification of the roll, that only happens on a 20, really. Like you roll a 20, everybody at the table's like, yay! You know, Cypher, you do all your negotiation up front and you know exactly, okay, I need a 6 or better. They roll that die and everybody leans in and you roll a 6 and the whole table goes, yay! You know, like you don't have that really in any other system that I've played. And so I love that aspect of it. The fact that even seemingly kind of mundane things and where the odds are in your favor, it's still exciting once you roll the die.
No, and I played a Numenera game, and that was my first experience to this like Cypher system. And I was always amazed at how involved in the story I was compared to Dungeons and Dragons. Like Dungeons and Dragons, it was kind of like, okay, we're exploring this. Oh, good, a fight. All right, now I get to like roll some dice and do some things. Whereas with Numenera, there was like a smooth transition through the whole thing. Like you were constantly paying attention and involved in the story and things like that. And I can only imagine Cypher is the same way. Because you're using Cypher for your One Punch game, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you take it to weird gonzo places? Like I know Cypher kind of allows you to do that.
Well, I mean, you could tune in at 9 p.m. tonight to find out. But yeah, it'll get a little nuts, sure, because it's One Punch Man, so anything is on the table. That's why I told them. I mean, when you look at the Cypher book, it's broken up into genres like horror, fantasy, modern, superhero. But I was like, you can pick anything from any of those because everything is in One Punch Man. There's a knight with a sword. You know, there's a kid with freaking, mechanical spider legs coming out of his backpack. You know, it covers the gamut of options. And so, you know, it's going to get a little nuts. We'll say that.
Sure. And Cypher's really good about giving narrative control to the players a little bit more than you get in D&D. So I think that's where a lot of people feel free. And then you have the GM intrusion on a 1 and you earn XP on a failure, which is just 2 great things that I think in a role-playing game encourage you. Like if you fail, you're like happy because like, all right, I got another XP. I gotta get 4 more of these. I'm going to get something else for my character or whatever I'm doing. And I love the sentence structure to describe a character. And the whole system's really good, whether it's Cypher, Numenera. I did Predation, which was their kind of going back into the histories of time and fighting dinosaurs with lasers. But you can get the Strange is really good, and Numenera is really good. Just the whole system just fits for everything. I want to do a superhero one, which would be very similar to your One Punch Man, because it's just so good that it just fits right in. So it's awesome. I love that. I love that system. It was the first one I streamed was Cypher. I knew Dungeons and Dragons, but I did Cypher because it felt easier to do with newer players and have us run a stream show than it was for me to remember all the 5e rules and get all that stuff going while trying to stream at the same time. Love it.
I definitely understand that, sir.
So I had a quick question about, so I went back to WebDM and I think I found the first video, right? 6 minutes long, talking about Dungeons and Dragons 5e. You're wearing the nice Cosa Nostra pizza T-shirt, right?
Uh-huh.
And, but it's already got pretty good double angles of cameras, and you're switching, and audio is not terrible at all. I mean, it's actually pretty good for a YouTube show at that point starting off. Tell us a little bit about that first episode, getting together. What's the origin story there that kind of gets that whole thing rolling?
The origin story of WebDM, it all starts about 4 years ago. Travis, our producer, the guy behind the camera, he makes everything happen. He's a badass. He's been doing video production technically since he was like 8 years old, filming superhero movies with his brother in the backyard. I mean, and so we lived together at the time here in Austin. I was living with him and his wife at an apartment. He's doing a video gig, doing commercial work, and he's got all this equipment, right? And he wants to do something on YouTube. He's like, Pruitt, I want to do a YouTube show, and he wanted to do one kind of in the vein of, oh God, now I'm going blank. It's the comedian Paul F. Tompkins where they share a glass of scotch or whatever, and he's just doing interview style. I'm going blank anyway, but he wants to do something like that. He's like, so just think, like, what could it be? We could do like toys, we could do whatever. We could just talk about nerdy shit, comic books. I don't know, but I just because he just had this itch and he had time and he had the equipment. And it was probably not even a week later, and I'm driving home, and it's just on the back burner percolating. And then, I'm going to head over to Jim's later that day. And the thing is about mine and Jim's friendship is we've been playing so long that anything and everything, I'm just like, I go to Jim and I'm like, I don't understand this rule. And then he explained, we talk it out. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I just got off the phone with him, and I'm like, I'm going to head over there as soon as I get off work. And, I work in the medical field, and I'm just driving along thinking like, man, Jim is just like a resource. He's like WebMD, WebDM. Oh my God. And like, I almost had a wreck when the realization like flooded my brain. And I drove straight home, and I walk into the room, and I'm like, Travis. And he's like, what? I'm like, WebDM. And he's like, WebDM. And I'm like, me and Jim talking about D&D, me asking him questions as the player. That's what we do anyway. He's answering them as the DM. And then his eyes just went. And it wasn't long after that we had our Mulligan Christmas, which it's in our group of friends. After the holidays are all done and you've done all the family bullshit, you just want to go have Christmas with the family you choose. That's what we do every year. It's called Mulligan Christmas. We get drunk and have a little white elephant thing, and we like me and Travis just corner Jim. It's at their house, him and Emma, and we're like just flooding him, and he's like, whoa, I don't know, man, I don't know. And so that's right after Christmas, New Year's. And then those first episodes came out in March. So it was not even like we were filming like 3 weeks later. It was like February, I believe, that we got together in our apartment, turned the corner into a nerdy alcove. I mean, there are already the bookshelves and everything, but it was just more of just like putting my and Jim's RPG books up. And, you watch those first few videos, and it's like, especially when we go through the classes, and we go through like 4 classes in like 6 minutes, like, oh yeah, fighters really cool. I like playing fighters. They hit stuff. Yeah. And barbarians are cool. I don't know. It's a far cry from what we've become now, where our videos are like 35 minutes
5 minutes long. Yeah.
It was probably a natural evolution to get to longer videos, because the conversation that you guys have is just kind of interesting. But originally, were you planning on like short little videos, or was it just kind of?
Yeah, no, we wanted bite size, like basically something you could watch while taking your Monday morning shit, or like that's what we wanted. But it was one of those things where we just started doing a little bit longer videos each time. And then where it really bloated was after we started our Patreon, and we have our Patreon podcast. So me and Jim are getting together once a week and having like an 1.5 to 2 hour conversation about something. And you could tell like that next video shoot, after we started doing that, we looked at each other and were like, yeah, you can tell we like talk a lot longer, because it's just like, I forgot the first one we did. It was like 45 minutes on whatever subject. And Travis was like, Jesus, guys. Like,
and I cut 15 minutes of it. No,
Yeah. How much does Travis end up cutting? Like, are you guys, you need like a cutting room floor edition of WebDM, I suppose.
It's usually at the end of something.
Yeah, I know that Travis does cut some stuff. He makes us look really good. He cuts out some of the ums and the ahs and the dead space, but he does, because of the way Jim and I like do the show. Like, it's not really scripted. Like,
Right.
Jim has his points that he has. We have a little talk about, you know, the points he wants to make. So I basically kind of reverse engineer my questions to lead him to those points. But it's really is just inside all of that is just we're having a conversation, and that's what I think why people really enjoy the show, is because it's just a couple of nerds having a talk, and it's not just someone reading a script at them like a talking head just reading at them. And so Travis does try to leave a lot of the realness in there. But, you know, sometimes we get off on a point and it's like, you know, he'll be like, yeah, y'all have already made that point 3 times. And so he'll cut the 3rd or 4th time, you know, that kind of stuff. But I mean, for the most part, I would say, you know, 5 to 10% of what we shoot on per show is maybe gets cut. Not a lot.
How many times do you do those intros though? Like it looks like you do a few of those intros as you come into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I usually do the intros after we shoot the show because that way my mind is steeped in what we just shot. So therefore I feel better served setting up what we're about to see. So I generally will have an idea, whether it's like a little turn of phrase or a pun that I want to like work in, but it's like I want to make sure I get everything into it. And so there are times where like my stupid tongue-tied mouth just can't get it right. And you know, you've seen those intros where Trav leaves me just fucking up and I'm just like, damn it, and I'm slamming on the table. And I love that. I absolutely love that. But there are times, I forgot which one it was a couple of weeks ago, where I just nailed the intro on the first time and I'm like, do you even need me to do it again? And he's like, no. And we just go on. And he has complete faith in, you know, like everything got recorded properly. We're good. And so, you know, it just all depends. But I would say average 2 to 3 tries. And I usually get it right.
How long have you guys been friends? I was just curious, like, because you guys have just great charisma, you and Jim, obviously. And I imagine Travis he knows how you guys operate, which is how he's able to edit these and kind of keep you guys on track. But like, yeah.
Well, I mean, we went to high school together. I was a senior when Travis was a freshman. And I was the teacher's aide in the theater class that he was in. And that's kind of where we first got introduced. But we didn't really hang out until like right after I graduated is when I really started hanging out with the whole group that included Jim and Travis and everyone else. But so, you know, over 20 years, we've been friends, like actually hanging out friends. And we've been playing pretty much that entire time. Travis was actually my first GM. He played ran a Vampire the Dark Ages game. I was a Malkavian. I still remember. I was a crazy ass Malkavian, and I got a little bit too into it. And Travis was like, "Okay, dude, you just I'm like what? I thought this was role playing." You know, I'm sitting there drinking my red Kool-Aid with we have candles everywhere, and I'm all, you know, being a creepy vampire. But yeah, like not shortly thereafter, I was in my first D&D campaign. That once that ended, Jim started up the next one, and then Jim's been my main DM since then, for at least for D&D. And you know, we played other games throughout the years, but we also worked at a movie theater together in Tyler for a while, and that's where my first D&D campaign started up in the office. I was the assistant manager, and we'd start up on we'd start the last run of movies at 10:30, and then everybody would close concession down, and then we'd pile into the office and play till 6 a.m. at least.
Wow. That's the way to do it, though. That's just really fun. When did you take the jump into being a dungeon master? Because saying these stories, you were playing a whole bunch, and you know Jim was always there being a DM for you. But
yeah, so for me being a DM, it was a lot of failure over many years trying to do this idea that I wanted to do, and it would last, you know, 3 to 5 adventures. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. It just something isn't clicking. The players aren't into it, or like, you know, the idea I had was different once I actually start playing it, and I'm not into it, and it just kind of fizzles, or it just never gets started. Okay, we're going to do this, and everybody makes characters, and then scheduling conflicts over a couple weeks, you know, and so it was years before. It was probably about. It was. I mean, it was during right at the beginning of WebDM, I ran my Spelljammer campaign group because I found those books, and it really is like keep plugging at it, people, because eventually you're going to find that thing that really ropes you in, and that's what Spelljammer did for me. And I ran a almost over a year campaign. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and everybody had a good time. It was the normal gaming group with Jim and Emma and our friend Audie, and Jim's brother Josh plays on his Land Between Two Rivers game. And, you know, we had shenanigans in space, and, you know, I wrote up a whole campaign Bible for it. And that's what I'm running right now on Tuesday nights, is in that same world. It started about 70 years later. And so it has been freeing in that, you know, I finally figured out how to DM the game from that viewpoint, from that sci-fi kind of viewpoint. And now I feel pretty confident I can probably run most things now. It's just, you know, building up that confidence in yourself. So keep plugging away. You'll get there.
So almost recommending like reading a bunch of different campaign settings, or reading a bunch of, or just like novels in general. And you're like, oh my gosh, I want to run a Buffy the Vampire Slayer game so bad, because you just got to find that hook, I guess.
Yep. Find whatever niche that you really love being nestled in, and just hunker down. And I mean, don't leave it, you know, because I mean, I was a huge Trekkie growing up. I mean, Star Trek is my jam. Star Wars is fun. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But Star Trek, I mean, come on, that's my jam. And so, you know, it's anyway, I could go on and on. But
so putting your conspiracy hat on, do you think we're going to see the Spelljammer campaign next year?
Honestly, I can see them doing something that has Spelljammer in it. I would love to see because you could definitely do like a expanded Planescape / Spelljammer setting book that has kind of both of them in it, because they're both kind of two sides of the same coin, a way to get to all the other parts of the cosmos by two very different routes. And so that's why I can kind of see like both being maybe wrapped up into it. But I in my heart of hearts, I feel that yes, it will be, because there are so many other sci-fi settings out there right now. And D&D just doesn't have one really yet, even though they've had one for years just sitting on the shelf. All you got to do is move the elf out of the way and bring it back down, and you know, let's go into space.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't have thought too much, but when we saw Eberron come out on DMSGuild this year, we saw Ravnica, an actual printed beautiful book campaign setting that I'm fascinated with ever since I started reading it and bringing in the Magic the Gathering. It really feels like they're going back to those campaign worlds, and they're ready to start bringing them to us. Like, it feels like we're almost done with the extra rules, or the Forgotten Realms is done pretty good and they've got these adventures, but they're ready to really just dive into that other stuff. Are we going to see Birthright? Are we going to see more Greyhawk? Are we going to see Dragonlance could come back at some point? There's a big resurgence of Dragonlance fandom out there. Or like we're saying, you know, Spelljammers, or just any of those other games that I think they have access to. Because they did say they weren't going to let Perkins and all them build their own yet, because that's what I was wondering. What would these guys have built if they had free reign? They've just been redoing what's already existed or has existed in a previous edition. They haven't really got to design their own at this point. This team, this Chris Perkins, Mike Merles, and those guys. So I'm hoping we see some of that. But it's cool that I love your enthusiasm for Spelljammer, which is cool. I know Jordan is a huge fan of Spelljammer. He was thinking about bringing his players at his home game to the Spelljammer game too. So you guys are in good company right now.
Well, I mean, all it takes is them uncovering a ship with a helm on it, right? That's what I love about Spelljammers. It's just there, just right outside the atmosphere, and it's always just there waiting. And so all it takes is finding that ship and be like, well, what's this? Oh my, like, where can we go now? It's like, well, you can go anywhere you damn well please. That's what I love about it.
No, I was one of the people way back in the day, I think, tweeting you and being like, publish your notes. Like, God damn it, Pruitt, I want your Spelljammer notes, because it seems like you've made these like beautiful, like from my perspective, they're beautiful roll tables that I would just have to like roll 7 dice and all of a sudden an adventure unfurls before me. Because the way you describe it was just like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Like, he has these tables and all this other stuff.
I apologize for that because they are not beautiful and elegantly laid out. It is the insane ramblings of a hopped up Star Trek fan just writing every bit of piece of adventure, oh, it's a bad guy, oh, it's a misguided whatever, oh, it's a whatever, poisoning a planet, blah blah blah, and yes, you do just roll on them, but there is no rhyme or reason to it. There's no like roll twice here and then whatever here. I was literally just like rolling on each one, and it was almost like story dice, where if the story made sense, I'm like, okay, we'll do that, and if it didn't, I just rolled again until I found something that did. Now, I will say that I have been working on refining those into something of a bit more usable format. But when that will come out, I have no idea. So I apologize for letting anyone down out there, Jordan.
No.
but I can't in good conscience release something that would just make me look like a crazy like hermit, like just sitting at my typewriter like Jack in The Shining. Like,
yeah, no, completely understandable. It's just I think you did a really good job because it was watching your shows and you kind of hinting and talking about how excited you were as Spelljammer that started me down the rabbit hole of going to Drive-Thru-RPG and buying all of these Spelljammer PDFs and then reading them, and you're like helms and there's spells to like breathe in the space and there's all this, like it's this whole universe, for lack of a better word, and it's, you can go anywhere, and that was like the really cool thing. And you start finding, like I found a really great PDF where you can roll like 4d6 and choose on these different paths to generate a sun, a world, and a couple of moons. And it was things like that I was just like, this is really, I don't know, like you could just sit down and randomly roll an adventure if you wanted to. And Spelljammer, I think, lends itself to that because it is like, well, you're just flying through space and you run into this. And I think yourself, you even said you were inspired by Faster Than Light, FTL, the game, and kind of utilizing some of those things. Yeah.
Oh yes, I was huge into FTL. I still am. It's like if I play a video game, it's probably that at my computer. And so yeah, I mean, just the randomness of it. Finding, one of my favorite adventures they ever did was one that I rolled up randomly, where they just found a comet, and inside the comet was a escape pod, and it turned out it was a great dwarven hero that they found, and they got to have a whole like end of New Hope like ceremony where they get like medallions and they have a big party because they found this guy that's like everybody thought's been dead for like 2 centuries, but that was the story I decided to create after rolling on a random table. I rolled Comet, I rolled Escape Pod, and then I rolled ally/hero. And so then I was like, okay, so it was an ally and a /hero inside of a pod inside the Comet. If it's been flying through space for a while, like Ripley, might have built up the whole thing. And, and so that was the adventure that they rolled. And so it took a while for them to, like, they were just wanted to like mine the Comet for some, they found some minerals that were valuable, and then all of a sudden they find something denser at the heart of it and break it up, and they find this pod, and hey, rolling up random adventures, that's no less viable than just coming up with something yourself. I mean, you get to still add all the meaning to it and the story behind that randomness, but it's a great idea generator.
So lots of improv in your game is kind of what I'm hearing. Like,
yeah. I mean, I do love improv. I mean, I love theater, and it's the performative aspect of stream gaming is the thing that is really like keeping me in it. Like, I love going nuts on screen. Sometimes literally with my Call of Cthulhu characters. Don't try to read the Necronomicon too much. It's never good, but it's a lot of fun to watch.
Was it Klato, Virat, something like that?
Necktie,
right? Yeah, something. It's so. I got to talk to you. It was probably about almost a month, maybe 2 months ago. You were giving me some great insights because you were telling all about the Starward Bound campaign and things were happening. You swore me to secrecy over dinner, which was super awesome. And I remember one of the questions I asked then, and I'm wondering if maybe the answer is about the same yet, or if you've gotten a little further now with having more shows. Do you feel like Starward Bound is going to be this 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year campaign kind of game that you're going to be doing? Or do you feel like you're going to tell a story, you're going to get like you said, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then you're going to say, okay, now I've done that, now let's look at some other types of stories I want to tell? Because like, what are some of the other stories that you maybe have rattling around in your brain that are trying to get some attention, just like this big Starward Bound story that you're telling?
Well, I would say we're somewhere approaching the middle of Starward Bound, the main kind of plot that I have set up. To go back, like one of my favorite characters I've ever played was Cypher System, but we played it in we were playing Tales from the Infinite Staircase. So a Monty Cook game played in a Monty Cook setting, and let me tell you, it worked perfectly. But the character I played in that was a strong-willed adept who focuses mind over matter. And her name was TK-808. And she escaped from a lithid. She was a human weapon that was created by lithids, because their minds are malleable and you can do this kind of stuff. And so that was her backstory. Up to date to this last week's Starward Bound, they found an NPC that they help escape from a realignment center with the lithids named TK-808. And so it has come full circle. And the main plot, which is figuring out that these lithids have been secretly experimenting on humans for what the party still doesn't know. But they've gone through a lot of threads to get to this point, and now they are enemy number one of the lithids after wrecking their base and escaping with their lives. Now they still have quite a ways to go. So to actually answer your question, I don't know how much longer it's going to go. Whether it'll be, I mean, we've been playing since March, so that's like 9 months now. Now, if it goes for another 9 months, if it goes for 6 months, I don't know. Hey, this is all up to them how long they want to play this. But like, kind of that main threat, they are about halfway to figuring out why and where and what. I mean, all the clues have been kind of laid out, and they're starting to pick up on them a little bit more. It's that great moment as a DM where like you've laid out all these clues, and then like the players get to this point and they're like, all right, we're here, but you know, it's still a little fuzzy. And then you go, well, you found this here, which led you to here, and then you remember this and this and this, and then you see their eyes go, oh my God, you know, like this has all been leading to this moment. And I'm like, yeah, it's all been leading to this moment. So I would say it's anywhere between 6 and 8 months, probably, depending on how much they want to take side journeys and what. Like I said, I had a little bit in the beginning of the My Precious Campaign syndrome, I would say, and definitely after PAX, like I have loosened up quite a bit. There was a lot of shit that we just threw in the last couple of adventures, and it was a blast. We had so much fun, and I'm like sitting here writing new notes down from all the shit I'm making up on the fly, just because one of the players says, you know, breaks into an Illithid cult and says, I am the chosen one. And he makes a really good persuasion roll. And I'm like, the cultists go, oh my God, it is he who will open the eye. And it just made that up and had to write that down, you know. And then I decided, yeah, that's something that they tell all the cultists to look for the chosen one, because they just want more humans to be part of this cult. And so if you're constantly looking for someone, you will constantly find humans that could fit that bill, which leads to a bigger and wider, more expansive cult. So, you know, it's fun things like that. Like, never discard anything a player says, unless it's just completely disruptive and will completely derail the campaign. If it's just something, it's like, well, I can work that in. Work it in. I mean, that's how you engage your players, right?
Yeah, for sure. You were mentioning having you know, X, Y, and Z leads to this, and it's all been leading to this. Do you reverse engineer? Like, do you start with like, you know, it'd be this really cool idea. They're all actually space hamsters. And then do you go backwards from that to drop those little hints in, or do you feel like those happen naturally?
Well, I try not to write campaigns. I have my bad guys, and they have a motivation and they have a goal. And that goal is happening regardless. If the players stumble upon that, then they stumble upon it. They will hear about it. They do not have to go at it. And so I that's the way I've been kind of playing it. Now, I had multiple threads running. You know, the Illithids are doing this thing. Well, where are they getting the humans? Well, the Neogi keep kidnapping humans. And that's the thing they glommed onto immediately. Like first adventure, they like went after the Neogi who were raiding this village when they could have finished their race and done whatever. But they chose to do that. So almost immediately they grabbed onto one of the main plot threads that led back to the main plot itself. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing, is they've been barreling full tilt boogie, like right at the main plot almost from the beginning, which I did not actually expect. And I've had to kind of like tease that out a little bit and throw some roadblocks in their way to slow them down a bit, because I'm like, I don't want them to show up to the Illithids at like 5th level and be like, just get wrecked.
Yeah.
You know, like I was expecting that, like, you know, 2nd, 3rd tier of play, right, like for them to get where they are. And they're now like 9th, 10th level. So I was able to kind of throw enough distraction, I will say, you know, like, oh, this planet over here is known for this, and they're, all right, let's go check it out. You know, just to kind of, I would not call it filler, because I mean, it's still forwarding, pushing forward the character development. Then that's all I care about. Like, the plot is there, so to speak, to use that word. I mean, because once they kind of grab onto the story thread, they're now part of the plot. So, you know. No, I don't really reverse engineer it. I just try to prep really good bad guys with motivations that make sense, at least to them. They don't have to make sense in the rest of the world, because most of the time the bad guy, it doesn't make sense. You know, you're Thanos. It's like, why do you want to kill half the world? You got all that power, just make the universe twice as big. You don't have to be an idiot, you know? So, you know, just prep good bad guys with real motivations. And then it's just about prepping encounters. If they go here, they will have an encounter with this bad guy, and these are the possible outcomes based on that encounter. Oh, they stop them. Oh, they delay them but don't stop them. Oh, they fail. Like, what happens? Just kind of be cognizant of what would happen in each of those scenarios. But even that, you know, nothing should be set in stone before the die is rolled, because that's otherwise, what's the point? You know, otherwise you're just going through the motions of playing a game as opposed to playing a game.
Yeah. Now, have we had any near TPKs, or have you started thinking about what happens if a character on that show gets airlocked or something goes horribly wrong? Because you have real bad guys that can do real bad things when they catch these people.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the art for the Overseer from this last week's episode, but he's an Illithid who's a body modification specialist. He's the one that's changing these humans. So, but at the end of each of his tentacles, he has a beholder eye. So he has 4 beholder rays that he can use. And the thing is Elry's already killed this guy once. He totally like caught me off guard. You know, I just had him in the corner monologuing, watching his weapons in their first kind of real, like, you know, weapons simulation or weapons test. And Elry went right at him and did a whole thing that was like, yeah, you killed him. Now, there's other Illithids, and he alludes to that being the heralds of he who watches over all. And he alluded to, like, oh, they'll just bring me back again. You know, so there is that kind of like, you know, you got to have your Marvel villains where they, even if you defeat them, they might be back. And so in this last adventure, in the first couple of rounds where, you know, he hits his mind blast and like 2 people fail, like the cleric and whoever fail, and then he hits off his first couple of like rays, because I gave him legendary actions, but I gave him a finite amount of legendary actions because I didn't think he should be that tough yet. It's one of those things where I want the bad guys to get better also. So I basically did it where he had 6 legendary actions to use, not like 3 around. And so I threw everything I had at the party in the first 2 rounds. And in the first 2 rounds, I thought it was totally going to be a TPK. There was only one player, one PC that was free. One of their badass NPCs, Cole, he was still fighting one of the telekinetic weapons. But Hilda was stunned and grappled by another telekinetic that had a white pupilless beholder eye in their forehead. This was something from my original campaign. I call them nulls. And they are literally have a 10-foot, or excuse me, a 5-foot anti-magic cone around them. So if they are engaged in melee with you, magic doesn't work. And so that's the thing, is these bad guys have been watching these people fight for a while, and they know that like Hilda's going to be a badass and bust out spiritual guardians and spirit weapon and all this. So it just waits till she's stunned and then grapples her and opens its eye and just pulls her back and keeps her away and uses her as a shield. And so, you know, like I really did think that in those first 2 rounds, at the end of that, where only Dakul, the monk, is able to act, and the barbarian is fighting a telekinetic weapon over here, and that's it, and everybody else is either stunned or paralyzed or whatever. I was like, oh shit, what have I done? Like, but right after that, rolls started going their way, and they got a couple of crits on the bad guy. They took out one of the weapons. Cole kept the other telekinetic weapon engaged, and then they focused fire on the overseer. And I mean, it ended with Hilda blasting a hole through him with a guiding bolt, like critting on a guiding bolt and doing like 65 damage or some shit. I mean, it was nuts. But then, of course, they had to escape the base before it transitioned back to the far realm. I was really hoping that they would get sucked into the far realm because the way I do it, and I don't mind letting this slip. Like I love the idea that, and Jim talks about this a lot, that Illithids are traveling the opposite direction in time, which is why their motivations seem very weird. And so when they go to the far realm is actually traveling the opposite direction in time. So if they would have gotten sucked into the far realm, we would have gotten something that Greg, his character Elry, wanted time travel so bad, and they would have actually gotten to go back in time. And when they got back out of the far realm, they would be back in their own time stream. And so we would have had some fun with that, but luckily they got out like 2 rounds before the timer like clicked off, and it pops and goes back. But the Dawn Rose, the ship, is pretty effed up, and they're pretty much adrift in a dead part of space where there is no Phlogiston. It is called the Dearth, and it is a graveyard of ships that go to seek fortune, and 9 times out of 10 don't return. So we'll have to see what happens after the Christmas break, because things aren't looking good for the crew of the Dawn Rose.
Oh, it sounds epic. It's like, I don't know. It's just really, I love all this Spelljammer stuff, and yeah, it's interesting how I'm always surprised that players can overcome so much. Like, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to destroy them. Like, I can't do this. And then as they tackle that, I'm like, okay, well, now I have to, you know, push that out of my mind and actually up the game another level. And then they tackle that, and then I'll up the game again. And I'm getting to this point where I'm like, what do I do? Do I just throw a CR24 monster at them and see what happens? Like, I don't know.
Yes,
and watch them take it down.
Yeah. Throw a couple of Tarrasques at them. Who knows?
Yeah. That's exactly what you do. It's awesome.
Yeah. They find the Godzilla planet.
We have so we're streaming both on Twitch and YouTube, awesome. And we've got a chat or a question for you on YouTube here, and they say, what do you feel is the most important thing to remember when your D&D comes back together after a long hiatus? Have you ever had that happen? Or you've got an upcoming break for your game coming up, like
oh yeah, well I would say the thing to remember most is to at least have a conversation with your players, to either remind them of the big clues if they were following kind of a mystery or trying to put a bunch of clues together. Like my players, they unlocked a shitload of disparate clues, and it kind of got, we actually got a little bit of like option paralysis, where they had so many options they didn't know where to go. And so I had a session with them after a break and was like, it was basically like let's sync our watches again, you know. And I basically laid out, I had a Google Doc I made up, and I laid out every single clue that they had to follow up on, and was just like, basically like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to head? Because it can help to refocus like the direction, at least out of the gate. And then you can get a little momentum going again, and try to do it pretty quick in that first session. Whether it's, even if it's just like, a faux momentum, so to speak. If it's just a fight, just something to get their blood up a little bit and just get them like excited again. I think that can be a big boost coming off of a break. Because a lot of times, you know, you come off of a break and you have that conversation at the table, and then you're an hour and a half into your session and you haven't done anything, and that can like kind of drain their spirits a bit. Mm-hmm. And I know we've all been there. We've all done that, you know, and you keep playing, and that's fun. But like, if you want to just kind of like hit the ground running, try to like have that talk, whether it's on a messaging platform or if you just want to hop on a call like this or just a phone call, just something to kind of recalibrate, resync everybody's watches, everybody get back on the same page going into it. And just make sure they have the info that they need to press forward right from the get-go.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you.
And running a game now, so it's really a show also. So there's almost like an additional aspect to what you're doing now with putting your games, with Starward Bound and the River Between Two Lands.
Land Between Two Rivers. Same thing.
I knew I was going to get it wrong.
Same difference.
Yeah.
How embarrassing.
Yes.
I mean, both rivers are technically between two lands.
There you go. So it is right. Yeah. It's canon now. It's canon. Everybody tell Jim.
That's going to be my next campaign. It's the River Between Two Lands.
And
thank you.
What are the differences you're seeing now? Because you've ran games that are, like you said, it's our friends, it's husbands and wives or significant others, it's brothers and friends from work or whatever. And then it's maybe we're putting some of those same people on a show, but now we're going to put it in front of an audience as something that should be, we think, entertaining. That's why we kind of do it, but we're also trying to have fun ourselves. And me and Jordan have kind of started doing, I've been doing a lot of games that are streamed. Jordan has a lot of home games. He's been getting into some of the streaming stuff. What are the differences you're seeing from running your game at home and then putting it on the World Wide Web so that people can actually consume it like it's a show?
I mean, I would say one of the biggest things is the fact that you only have 3 hours, or generally games run 2 to 3 hours. Now, at home, our games generally ran like we would plan on like 4 hours, but sometimes we'd get up to 6. The older we got, the less times we hit 6-8 hours. You got time, and then kids start popping up. So trying to get everything in that time frame. It's the cat show.
It's the cat show. Here. Yep. Yeah. Well, sorry guys, we're not talking about D&D anymore. It's just cats all time.
It's all cats and snoot booping. Boop. But there's also that entertainment aspect to it. This should be entertaining. People need to want to watch this. So one of the most important things is a session 0 with your streaming cast. I did a little bit of a questionnaire. Like it was only like a 5-question questionnaire. I've seen some that are up to like 30, 50 questions. And to me, that I didn't need that. I wanted a few basic things. I wanted to know, like, what was their favorite RPG, like video game, tabletop, otherwise, does not matter. What's your favorite role-playing game? Because that would give me insight into, action versus story versus exploration. I want to know their 3 favorite sci-fi movies, because again, I want insight into what makes the players tick, because you have to, as the DM, engage those players. That is, the onus is on you for that. You have to present at least something that is engaging. They have to also engage. There needs to be some trust there at the beginning that they're gonna engage with what you present them to an extent, but you need to present them something that is engaging. And so when I got my little questionnaire back, I mean, I have in the front of my current campaign Bible, I have each player and their answers and my thoughts on that. And it's kind of weird, honestly, like how close to right I was about most of the players based off of their answers. But getting that insight up front, whether it's just a session 0 or you come up with a questionnaire that is close to what you're needing for whatever setting you're doing. These are all ways that you can at least get to know your players before you start playing, assuming that we're talking about streaming, where at least some of them are going to be people you've never played with. Yeah. And so it's okay to get to know them a bit, and because you need to foster that trust between them, that you can go to certain places, and that's obviously where you're going to want to know we need to set some rules up, like whether I know like X cards, lines and veils. A lot of people use those now. Some people decry them. I'm sorry, but I think they're a good tool because you never know what happened in someone's past that is going to trigger them, because it could be something seemingly innocuous, right? I mean, I tend to think that I have no real borders or boundaries. But there have been some times in playing like Call of Cthulhu that I got very close to messaging Will and be like, hey man, can we just draw a curtain on this scene, please? Because like I felt like I was starting to go to a place where like I wasn't comfortable, and I never thought that would happen to me ever. Yeah. Right? Because I'm like, this is a game. None of this is real, but it doesn't matter. When you're engaging, especially online, where you're really trying to present an entertaining, a real character that has thoughts, feelings of their own, you can start to go to a place that is uncomfortable for you as the player, not the character. Now, I have gotten to where now I can kind of use that and turn it around and just use that fear, but still, I think you need to leave an out for your players in case you start to push some into some territory that they'd rather not be. And so so developing that trust is a very important part, and both like questionnaires, like I said, and session zeros can go a long way to at least getting a firm starting point under your feet to then shove off on your adventure.
There you go.
Awesome.
That's great. Awesome. We're coming up towards the end of our show. I want to say everybody probably knows who you are and all this other stuff, but like, you run WebDM, you've got a whole bunch of shows on Twitch. Do you want to plug anything particular?
Well, I will say this. We are going to have to do a lot of fun hammering out of a script tonight and / tomorrow, but RPGN is going to be back tomorrow on the WebDM Twitch channel. I believe it's 2 Eastern or 2 Central. I hate myself right now because we kind of switched the time recently from what it normally is, but check WebDM's Twitch, Facebook or whatever, and you'll see tweets about it. So there's that, but also tonight on the WebDM Twitch, come on over 9 p.m. Eastern for some Cypher System One Punch Man. It's a one shot. It's One Punch Man, and I already know a couple of the characters are just fucking ridiculous, and they're exactly what they need to be, and so that should be a raucous good time. And if you got a little extra scratch in the pocket, send us a donation. It's a couple of great charities. To me, there's no way we're not going to hit that $1,500 goal. We're only like $70 away. So come on out tonight, and then tomorrow for RPGN.
Yeah, man.
2 p.m. Central is what it says on the Twitter there. I looked it up for you.
Rock and roll.
I got to say, when you came out with RPGN, I watched the first episode and I'm like, that magnificent bastard, like what a clever idea. And I was really upset that I did not have it first. So good job.
I honestly couldn't believe that it didn't already exist. Now there is a Twitter that's kind of that, but to do the actual, like the in-between bits with the clips and everything, we're still working on we're still refining the format, exactly how long of clips we want to have and talking about it and setting it up, because we want to make sure that the true heart of what RPGN is coming across. But let me tell you, those writing sessions are some of the most fun I have ever had.
Nice.
With me and Lindy and Travis and Brandon, our producer. Oh my God. We get some beer, and it gets raucous, to say the least.
And people email you the clips, correct? So it's not a lot of hunting and searching for yourself.
Well, I mean, there was a lot more hunting and searching in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Finding channels, finding clips, sending them over. Sean over at PowerScore RPG, he's the guy that basically is our clip wrangler, and he's got a couple people that help him kind of just bring in clips. But if you have anything that you see out there that you love and you want on the show, please either shoot and mention it if you don't have a clip from the show, or just send that info over to PowerScore RPG. I believe it's PowerScoreRPG at gmail.com, or just hit him up on Twitter in the DMs there, PowerScore RPG, and we'll try to get it on the show.
That's great. Well, awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on to our humble little Saturday morning D&D show. This was a great discussion, and I had a lot of fun. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a blast.
As always, guys, you can catch us on YouTube, Twitch right here, Saturday mornings, as we have a podcast as well, where if you want to catch up on audio only format, you can do that. So be sure to check us all out, and we will see you next Saturday with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye, everybody.